Hey guys, Barrett here with Specca Tech. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about a beastly ported subwoofer from Arendal Sound. It's the 1723 2V. This subwoofer has two 13.8-inch drivers, as well as a 1200 watt RMS amplifier, so it has some fantastic performance, so you're going to want to see this. If you're looking for a subwoofer that has great sound quality, as well as some of that big boy bass performance, this is probably a subwoofer you're going to want to look at, so let's get into it. I've already done an overview video where I discussed all the specs of this subwoofer. I also discussed the app and all the settings that you can change from the app. I'll link that video in the top right hand corner of this video in case you guys want to check that out after this one. Since we've already talked about the specs in the previous video, we're not going to be talking about those in today's video, but what we are going to talk about is the sound quality, the build quality. I also did some compression testing measurements in my room, so I'm going to show you guys those as well. And of course, there will be some sound demos for you guys to check out. Before we get into the demos and the measurements of this subwoofer, let's talk about the sound quality. The sound quality of the 1723 2V is just something that really stood out to me. It just has that quality bass sound. What I mean by that is that there is some nuance to the bass. It's not going to be like a one-note wonder, so to speak, like a cheaper budget subwoofer. There's some nuance built in here, but it's also low distortion, so it kind of gives you that low throaty tone that I've come to associate with better quality bass. If you're looking for this subwoofer for music, don't think that it's only a home theater subwoofer simply because it's ported. When listening to music with the 2V, it performed very, very well. I was quite impressed. A song that I like to test out my subwoofers with is Billie Eilish's NDA, and that's simply because it has a really nice chest thumpy bass to it, and that's kind of what I attribute to music. Like, you're kind of looking for that nice hard hitting bass, and this subwoofer performs very well with that. So when listening to that song, I could feel it in my clothes, I could feel it in my chest, the whole room could feel it. It just hits so nice and hard. It's just quite impressive to hear, actually. Another song that I like to test out subwoofers with for music is Kill Shot by Eminem, and that's simply because it does have a little bit more of a lower tone to it that not a lot of music has, so it has some lower octaves, and it does have a bit of a hard-hitting punch as well, so I like to see how it handles that hard-hitting punch while still providing that low end. And again, I was just impressed with the performance of the 2V. It sounded so clean, it hit nice and hard, and provided that nice low-end rumble that just energized my room. It was causing things to shake, and again, I could feel it in my clothes, I could feel it in my chest. Now, of course, when I'm listening to demos, I'm listening to them much louder than I normally would just to see how it performs. But again, this thing can just give you that impact. It can give you that violence in your room that I believe some people are looking for. So if you are looking for a subwoofer that's mainly for music, don't shy away from this one because it's ported. Not only because it performs very, very well in its ported mode, but you also have the option to seal that vent so that you can run it in sealed mode, and then you have 3 different EQs that you can run in that sealed mode as well. Make sure that you stick around because I did take measurements of both the vented mode and sealed mode, so I can show you guys the difference in response in my room. I did also take measurements of the different EQ modes because there's 3 EQ modes in sealed mode and 3 EQ modes in vented mode. So we're going to show all of that to you guys in just a minute in the measurement section. If you don't have the space for it, that part I understand because it is a pretty big subwoofer, but then you can have a look at the smaller brother, which is the 2S. It's basically the same subwoofer, just the sealed version, and it performs very well for music as well. It's not quite as well for home theater, but it still does have great home theater performance. Now, although the 2S does have great home theater performance, it can't really compare to the 2V because this thing is a monster when it comes to home theater content. So when I sat down to demo home theater content, I started off with the Edge of Tomorrow opening scene. It's just a torture test that I like to start off with to see how the subwoofer performs with extreme bass, I guess. It's extreme low end, and this thing just knocked it out of the park. It didn't struggle at all. My whole room was shaking. I could feel my clothes vibrating. I could feel my chest vibrating, and I was standing quite a ways back because I was recording the scene, and it just blew me away. Like I said, that is a bit of a torture test for subwoofers, but this subwoofer handled it no problem. It didn't break a sweat. It still remained clean. It never looked like it was losing control. It just performed very well with that scene, and my whole room felt it. And from there, I moved on to the Manhattan race scene from Ready Player One. And again, this subwoofer just blew me away with that scene. I know that there's a lot of you out there that don't like shaking in your room, but for me, it's kind of a metric to see how well a subwoofer is performing, or at least output-wise, how well a subwoofer is performing. And this thing got my room shaking. Now, I know that I could go through my room and put little felt things and little pieces of foam to try and stop all the shaking. But when I'm watching a movie at normal listening volumes, there's not really a whole lot of shaking in my room going on. It's only with these demos, and it kind of is, or has become somewhat of a metric for me to see how the output is of a subwoofer, and this thing has some great output. So when the wrecking ball comes through through, again, my room is just energized. When the T-Rex is stomping in that scene, it's just impactful. You can feel it. You can feel it in the chair. You can feel it in your body. You can feel it in your clothes. And then when it gets to the King Kong scene, same thing. You're just feeling that impact. It's just very, very impactful, but very clean for home theater content. Now, those two scenes just absolutely blew me away and were fantastic. But then I played the opening scene of Blade Runner 2049, and guys, this subwoofer just came to life. My room came to life. My whole house came to life. If you haven't watched that movie, I highly recommend that you do. But even if you don't want to watch the movie, at least play the opening scene to see how your subwoofers perform. It's one of those opening scenes that just puts a smile on your face. There's just so much bass. And if you have a high performance subwoofer like this 2V, you can't help but smile and laugh because it's just everything is energized. Everything is shaking. You feel your whole body, like you feel your body shaking. It's just incredible, and it's something that you have to experience if you have high performance subwoofers. So how does the 1723 2V perform with home theater? I had nothing but a smile on my face, guys. This thing is so impactful. It's so energetic. It just energized my room. It energized my body. I could feel my skin somewhat shaking a little bit in the Blade Runner 2049 scene, and I was standing a little ways back. But yeah, it's just incredible. If you're looking for something that's going to give you high performance for home theater at a relatively attainable price, this is definitely a subwoofer that you should be looking at. So to sum up the sound quality of the subwoofer, it's just plain impressive. You're getting what you pay for here. You're getting fantastic sound quality that is very impactful. It's very clean. It's low distortion. It's not a one-note wonder like a budget subwoofer. There's some nuance built in there, and it can just give you that performance, that output that you might be looking for home theater. And yet at the same time, it can be subtle for music as well. And as an added bonus, this is basically a sealed and ported subwoofer in one, because you can seal that port and run it in sealed mode. For those of you that want or just feel like you need that sealed subwoofer, that's an option with this one as well, and it still gives you fantastic performance with home theater and music. All right, so we've already talked about the sound demos, but now it's time for you guys to hear them and see the excursion of the subwoofer while we're hearing them. So we are going to do some demos here, but keep in mind that my recording equipment, my room, as well as the device that you're listening on is going to greatly affect the sound. So this isn't an accurate depiction of what I was hearing in my room, and not to mention YouTube does compress the sound, so it isn't the best way for us to show you guys what something sounds like, but it's pretty much the only way when you have a YouTube channel. Also keep in mind that this is just the subwoofer with no room calibration. I did not calibrate this in my room. I completely disabled anthem room correction on my AVM90, and I also want to point out that for music I did disable the speakers, so what you're going to hear is only the LFE, or only the low end signal of the music. That helps me bypass copyright, but it also helps isolate the subwoofer so you can hear exactly what the subwoofer is doing without the complication of all the other sounds going on with the music. For home theater, I did leave the speakers on so you can hear the whole scene and feel the whole impact of the subwoofer with the speakers itself. But here we go, let's get into these demos. So as you can see and as you can hear, this thing has fantastic performance. It shakes my whole room. It just shakes the whole house really. But keep in mind that again, for demos, I do crank it up, so there's a lot more shaking going on than what I would normally hear when I'm watching a movie at reasonable listening levels. Now that we know that this 2V has incredible sound quality for both music and movies, let's talk about the build quality because it's also something that's pretty fantastic on this subwoofer. I feel like Arendal always puts a little bit of extra time and effort into the build quality of their products, and that's no exception when talking about the 1723 2V. Arendal likes to use HDF or high density fiberboard for their products, which most other manufacturers are using MDF, which is medium density fiberboard. And because they use HDF, this subwoofer is pretty hefty, it's very solid, it's very robust. You're going to want two people to move it around, especially if you're lifting it. What I do is I put it on carpet sliders so I can just slide it around, which is very, very helpful when I don't have somebody to help me move things around. One great thing about this subwoofer though is even though it is quite large, it should have a fairly high wife acceptance factor, and that's because the front is just so minimalistic, it's so simple and so clean. You wouldn't even really know it's a subwoofer unless you know it's a subwoofer. So if you do have this at the front of your room facing you, you're not going to see much. The only thing you're going to see is an Arendal logo in the bottom center, and that's it. So that's why I believe it has a very high wife acceptance factor, because it doesn't really dominate the room. You don't have these large drivers showing. It just doesn't look like a piece of sound equipment unless you know it's a piece of sound equipment. But if you do like having a driver showing, you can turn it sideways, which would add to the width. So it is going to be a little bit wider that way because it is deeper, if that makes sense. But if you do want to have a driver showing, you can do that. You just have to turn it and show that driver. And then you can either put the nice circular grill on, or you can take it off if you're like me and like to see the drivers. There isn't much to talk about when it comes to the finish. I have it here in matte black. They did a very good job on the finish. There's nothing I can point out that's a negative here. Moving along to the amplifier at the back, again, I think this is something that Arendal took a little bit of extra time and effort to build a nice amplifier, nice looking amplifier. It looks very modern. It looks very clean. It has a nice brushed aluminum look to it. It has a nice LCD color display. It just looks all around modern. It looks very clean. It looks very premium, I guess is a good way to put it. It's a high-end looking amplifier that has 1200 watts RMS to pump those two 13.8-inch drivers. Again, just all around when it comes to the build quality, they did an excellent job. Okay, so we've covered everything else. Now it's time to talk about the performance. So I did do room measurements or room EQ wizard measurements in my room, and I did compression testing so that I can show you guys where it starts to compress and how much output it has. But I also did sweeps of each EQ mode, so EQ 1, 2, and 3 in vented mode and EQ 1, 2, and 3 in sealed mode. So we're going to cover all that here. So let's jump over to my computer and I'll show you guys the measurements that I took. All right, guys, so here we are on my computer, and I already have the room measurements pulled up for the Arendal 1723 2V. So what we're going to start off with here is I'm going to show you guys the differences between the different EQ modes in both sealed mode and vented mode, and then I'm going to show you guys the compression testing. So here we are in sealed mode. So this is EQ1, and I only did these compression testing down to 10 hertz. Down here I do have a couple measurements down to 5 hertz just to show you guys how it performed below 10 hertz. But after 10 hertz it starts to roll off pretty quick, so that's why I stopped at 10 hertz. Here is sealed mode in EQ2, and then here is sealed mode in EQ3. So these are the exact same volume. I didn't change the volume at all, I just changed the EQ mode. So as you can see, somewhere around 60 hertz or so, they start to deviate from each other. So EQ3 is obviously the least amount of low end, EQ2 is kind of in between, and then EQ1, you have the most amount of low end with the sealed mode. And I did run compression testing in sealed mode, and I chose EQ2 just kind of because it's in the middle. I should have maybe chose EQ1 because it's the most linear response out of the three, but I just chose EQ2 to kind of show you what's in the middle. But let's move along and show you guys what the differences are between the different EQ modes in vented or ported mode. So here we have EQ1 in vented, EQ2, and EQ3. So again, essentially what you're doing is you're limiting the low end depending on which EQ mode that you're choosing. EQ1 has the most low end, EQ2 is kind of in the middle, and then EQ3, as you can see, it rolls off pretty heavily starting at about 35 hertz already. So if you're wanting the most low end, then obviously EQ1 is going to be your choice, and that's what I chose to use for my compression testing because I believe that most people are going to be running this in EQ1 mode. But if you want to see a quick comparison between the EQ modes in sealed and vented, so here's sealed EQ1, and then here is vented EQ1. So pretty similar all around, but in sealed mode you do get a little bit more low end after about 12 hertz here. It rolls off a little bit slower. And then you have sealed mode EQ2 and vented mode EQ2. Again, fairly similar, but sealed mode, it starts to deviate at about 15 hertz and give you a little bit more low end. And then in vented mode, you got more output up here. And lastly, we have sealed mode in EQ3 and vented in EQ3. So a little bit more output here, but the sealed mode is a flatter response down to about 10 hertz as the ported mode rolls off or starts to deviate around 21.85 hertz. Okay, so let's do show the compression testing in sealed mode first. So like I said, I chose EQ2 for my compression testing. So here's EQ2 at plus 27, or sorry, minus 27, 24, 21, 18, 15, 12, and 9. And actually 7 as well. Yeah, so you are getting a little bit of compression in this pinkish kind of purple line here, and obviously in red you are getting quite a bit of compression here. So red is not going to be our line that we can use. Although the compression isn't terrible here, we are hitting compression with this pink line, but we technically could kind of use this as our max output, even given the fact that it's compressing probably somewhere starting around here. You're starting to compress a little bit, and then more so from 15 hertz down. You're compressing probably at least a dB or so. But you know what? Let's just use that simply because it's not terrible compression. It's not like the two lines are touching or anything. So let's just use that for fun as our max output line just for this video. If I was doing a comparison, then I wouldn't use this compression line because it was actually compressing. So in a comparison, it wouldn't be fair. Down to 10 hertz, you're looking at 102 dB. Absolutely impressive. 20 hertz, you're looking at 104.65. And then at 33 hertz, this is our biggest peak. So 114.5 at 33 hertz. And then another kind of a peak here is 60 hertz at 110. If you keep turning it up, you are still going to get more output up here. It's just going to compress on the lower end, which is obviously more difficult for a subwoofer to produce. So as we saw here, as I turned it up, you're still getting more output up here, but it's starting to touch down here. So it's not that this is the max output overall, but it's the max output before it starts to compress heavily, and it basically has no more output down in these lower frequencies. But you are going to be able to get more in these upper frequencies. So keep that in mind. Now let's have a look at the ported compression testing. So I chose EQ1. So here's 27, 24, 21, 18, 15, 12, and that's it. So as you can see with 12, you're getting pretty heavy compression here. They're getting pretty close to touching. So we wouldn't be able to use this line. You're getting some slight compression right here from like 14 hertz to 11 hertz. No big deal. I think it's safe to use this kind of teal line as our max output for vented mode, which you're getting some pretty solid output here. So down to 10 hertz, you're looking at 98.53. 20 hertz, you're at basically 108 dB. At 33 hertz, you're 112.73-ish, 112.8. At 60 hertz or 61, you're 106. So you're getting some very, very solid output from the subwoofer. And again, if you're running room calibration, it's going to bring these peaks down. You're probably going to be looking at a line somewhere here-ish. Now, if you want to see how this subwoofer performs in vented and sealed mode down to 5 hertz. So this is sealed mode down to 5 hertz. As you can see, like I said, after 10 hertz, it's rolling off pretty quick. So that's why I didn't bother running all of the sweeps down to 5 hertz. There's just no point. It's rolling off anyway. And then here you have ported mode down to 5 hertz. Again, after 10 hertz, it's kind of fallen off a cliff here. So there wasn't much point to run it down to 5 hertz because it doesn't even, we're not even on the scale here down to 5 hertz. At around 7.5 hertz, it's already off the scale. So that's why I didn't bother, but to show you guys, that's what it looks like below 10 hertz. But overall, fantastic performance for both. I like the versatility that you can run this subwoofer in sealed or vented mode, and the fact that they include some presets with different EQs if you want to trim your low end without having to, do some extra calibration. You have these different EQs. So if you're not a fan of a lot of low end, you could choose EQ3, which is going to give you more headroom in these higher frequencies because it's not having to work so hard with these lower frequencies. So you're probably going to compress a lot later. This already gives you a pretty good understanding of how it's going to perform, at least how it performed in my room, and a general understanding of how it might perform in your room. Excellent output, as is evident from these lines. And that just goes to show why I was feeling such an impact, especially in the Blade Runner 2049 opening scene. This thing was just just rocking this house really, and I could feel it in my bones, I could feel it in my body, and this is why. It just has excellent output down to about 10 hertz. You're pretty linear, so fantastic output for this subwoofer. Now let's get back to the review. As you guys can see, the performance on this 2V is absolutely beastly, and I like the fact that it has some variation. You have some choices there. You have different EQ modes that you can choose. You have vented mode, you have sealed mode that you can choose, and all of them perform very well in my room. I think you're actually getting a lot of value for your money here, because you are getting top tier performance, you're getting excellent build quality and an excellent aesthetic, and you get that kind of minimalistic front of this subwoofer that's going to be accepted by most wives, I feel. Even though it is quite large, it isn't very dominating in the room because it's pretty simplistic when you're looking at it. If you guys are interested in checking out or purchasing this subwoofer, I have dropped links down in the description below. Please do consider using those links, as it doesn't cost you guys anything extra. It's not like you're going to get a better deal if you go straight to Arendal. You're getting the same price regardless, but it does help out the channel, so I'd really appreciate that. And if you guys do want to see more videos about the Arendal subwoofers, make sure that you subscribe. I will be doing a comparison between the 2S and the 2V and showing you guys the room EQ wizard measurements that I took in my room of both of them, so you can kind of see the performance differences of them. I'm also considering comparing the Arendal subwoofers, the 2S and the 2V, to something a little bit more budget friendly. I still have the TONEWINNER D6000 here for review, so I'm considering comparing the room measurements that I have of both of them. So I've done compression testing of both of them in the exact same spot in my room, so we could compare the performance or the output of them. If you guys would like to see that, drop your comments down below, and remember to enjoy your systems. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.